Shelby household. Jeffrey Stoffel currently lives at 4711 West North 00 South. Jeffrey Stoffel was born on October 24th, 1955. He was enlisted in the Army and served in Vietnam and Desert Storm wars. He was a specialist 4th class and served. When were you drafted, or when did you enlist for the Vietnamese War?
I wasn't drafted. I was a volunteer, and enlisted in it was March, I believe, of 1974, but didn't go in until September 2nd, 1974, under the 6-month delayed entry program that the Army was sponsoring at that time.
What was the 6-month delayed entry? How did that?
It just gave you 6 months to realize what you were going to do, prepare yourself for it. And I was still a senior in high school. I hadn't finished high school yet. Just give you, 6 months to just have fun, get ready for the next time.
All right. What was the situation of the war at this time when you were entering?
The war was pretty much dwindling down. They were bringing a lot of guys home. People were kind of, glad, but also dejected. I mean, it was a pretty traumatic time in history for us. We're losing one. It was confusing to me, but later on, as I got into the service, I was kind of surprised at some of the things that I seen that other people were thinking about, how they were feeling.
Yeah, there was a pretty heavy anti-war sentiment in America at that time. How did you feel about these activists and their message?
Well, I talked to combat soldiers about that kind of stuff, and they were fighting for these people as much as they were fighting for the people that were for it. They didn't want to see them lose their freedoms of speech, and they wanted them to have the rights to protest, and they were actually taking part in the protests themselves and speaking out against it. It just got to be a very ugly event in our history towards the end, and no matter how much honor that the soldiers and sailors and everybody put into it, and it just couldn't get any better. It was just one of those things that was going to last forever. It seemed like it was better to cut our losses and come
on. When you first joined, do you have any boot camp experiences that you remember?
Oh yeah, there's lots of those. The one thing that really stands out in my mind was our drill sergeants. They were all Vietnam veterans, active combat veterans, and they just had a wide range of personalities. I remember mine. He was a real nice guy, but you could see a faraway look in his eyes constantly. He never really screamed or yelled at us. He was real firm, but he just expected us to be able to do everything that he did, and that's the way he taught us. And there were some that were screaming maniacs that you didn't know if they was going to be inside you screaming to get out or pounding you down on the ground from 1 minute to the next. But I think that I did get the best drill sergeant of the bunch. It was all about respect and a duty and honor to him. And I could tell. He was a good guy.
After boot camp, do you recall any of your first days of service? What were those like for you?
Oh, boot camp, and then the advanced individual training, then going to my regular duty station in Fort Riley, Kansas. Yeah, there's quite a bit of difference. We were a real tight unit when you get out of boot camp. It was a pretty serious time, and we all wanted to do the best we could for each other, and we were there to serve our country. There was a lot of very highly motivated people, and it was a very different situation for me. I've never been anywhere away from home, just a little bitty small town, and now I'm thrown in with all these guys that we're all the same. Nobody's better than anybody else. We treated each other that way, and we got along really well. My first experiences into the real Army, my first permanent duty station, was there was a lot of confusion there too, because a lot of these guys, again, were combat veterans just returning from a war, and there was a mixture of all different kinds. You had every movie shows you just a few more of them. I seemed to get along really well with a lot of the combat guys, and I would sit around lots and listen to their stories and try to understand what they went through. But it was a learning period for me too. There are situations that they were in where they weren't sure if they did the right thing, but they did something. And they kind of give you an idea of what you might have to do if you ever got stuck in that situation. And I really appreciated that input.
Yeah. Could you just kind of describe your services in the Vietnam War, where you served?
Sure. Well, like I said, the Vietnam War was tailing down pretty fast, and although just one time the post was put on activation order, and I never did understand quite what was going on. For a day, I think it just amounted to one day we were on really high alert. I'm not sure what caused it, but I was not in a situation where I asked questions. They told you what to do, and you just did it. That was all there was to it.
Like, what was your rank and your duties?
I went in as a private and received about a year later. I went to private first class, and I got specialist fourth just before I left for Korea. When I was a heavy equipment operator, I was a combat engineer. I drove bulldozers and earth movers and bucket loaders, and dump trucks, heavy equipment of all sorts. Just kind of a little bit of everything.
Was there any particular reason why you joined the Army for any?
Well, no particular reason other than my dad was in the Army.
Yeah.
My dad got drafted. I expected to get drafted, but the draft stopped. I still had planned on going into the service to start my life after high school. Hopefully, it would become a cornerstone for the development of the rest of my life. I've had a lot of experiences, so good and bad, kind of a mixture, but it's the first time that I really got to mix with people of different ethnicities and backgrounds and origins. Never had, come from a real little town in the middle of nowhere. Pretty calm, peaceful. Never anything really exciting went on there, but nothing ever really bad either. So it was an extremely eye-opening experience. I'm not so sure that I took it in real well, but I didn't get in any trouble. I always did what I was told, followed orders. Every now and then my mouth would get me in trouble, but it was just because you can't understand some really stupid things, and so when I questioned them, it just meant you're going to get in trouble even more. So I just learned not to even ask questions, just wait for the next day to get over with, and the next day after that till your term was over and you could go back to civilian life.
You said your dad was drafted. What war was he drafted in, and did his role in Army life, how did that influence your?
He was drafted in 1951 into the Korean War as a military policeman. He was the only son, and so this actually foregoed him having to go to Korea for just the chance that he might be killed in the family name Stoffel. He ended up in Germany and served 2 years as a military policeman.
Did that influence you in any way, or did you want to kind of continue on with the family role of being in the armed forces?
Yes, yeah, sure. My dad was in the Army, and that had something to do with why I went in the Army. I think a lot. I seen the Vietnam War stopping. We were not going to be active in it anymore. So I actually went into a branch where I thought I might learn something that I could enjoy doing the rest of my life. As it turned out, I couldn't find work as a heavy equipment operator anywhere, where near where I wanted to live. And I wasn't the best educated kid. I mean, that was my fault. I didn't study hard. So it wasn't something that I was ready to take on privately on my own.
You also joined the war effort in Desert Storm. Why did you feel that you volunteer for this again?
Well, when I was little, I'm going to say probably 10, 11, 12, I would every day watch the 6 o'clock news. And to me, the body counts were a really confusing thing. And I probably did this better part of 3 or 4 years, probably 65 to almost 70 every day. I thought it was a game. I mean, I could understand what was happening on TV, but the war protests and everything, it was so far away. And there was not very many people from Huntington directly involved. There were a few, and we had casualties from Huntington in Vietnam. But I was not directly involved with these people either. We were very, what would you call, shelled. The outside world didn't get to Huntington a whole lot. But, the body count thing, it was like, it would say, just guessing numbers, 260 BC dead. And it would say 13 U.S. dead. And although, I realized that this was a bad thing, but in a war, the idea is to eliminate the enemy. And even, 10, 12, 13 years old, I understood that. But I just never understood that it was never going to end. No matter how big their numbers were, no matter how small our numbers were, they were never going to quit until we annihilated all of them. And we weren't prepared to do that any more than we were prepared to send hundreds of thousands of more soldiers over there for what ended up being a kind of sort of lost cause. Too many restrictions, too many handcuffs. You can't tell a guy to go do something and then say, that if you get to this point, you got to quit doing it and come back. It's just not the way to do it.
In Desert Storm, did you volunteer for that, or were you? I don't know if they had the draft then or not.
The draft was going. Yeah. No, I pretty much was a volunteer. Anything they did in the service, whenever they asked for volunteers, if somebody else didn't beat me to it, or somebody waited too long, I always volunteered for it. I thought that, I'd get to do something that somebody else didn't get to do. Well, yeah, I did. Got to wash out a lot of trash cans that I really didn't want to, but I got to do some other things that were fun to do, and other guys did. And that's the pros and cons. But there's nothing wrong with being a volunteer. Volunteers are the backbone. Hey, the whole United States military right now today is all volunteer, and it's the best it's ever been.
In Desert Storm, how was the situation of the war? How were we involved in that?
Well, there again, there's something about, I don't know, the way I grew up, the way I look at things, that I just always thought that I was combat material. So I volunteered again, just in the chance that, we might get to go over there and actually be in combat. I mean, that is, I'm not ashamed to say that I wish that my life some way or another I would have been able to find out if I had what it takes to do the job right when called upon to do it.
You were stationed in Korea for this Desert Storm?
Oh, no, my year in Korea was from 1976 to 1977. It was the third year of my 3-year voluntary hitch I did in the regular Army. And I volunteered to go to Korea. I put in 4, 5, 6 transfers before I finally got it. And I went over there in September of 76.
What was the atmosphere like there?
Oh, it was a great unit. I was really, really surprised. We were very cohesive. There was absolutely no disrespect shown. We got along really well. And we were only about 12 miles from the DMZ. And I got to spend a lot of time up there. When you got up there, now you're seeing the real soldiers. These are guys that are combat prepared, combat ready. I was on the last active artillery fire base in the world of the United States at that time. It was pretty neat to have, shells flying over your head and listening to them. And we built bunkers and did a lot of stuff over there. It was a real good experience. I can still think back on that today and think that was a very rewarding time in my life. And I do not regret that year at all. It was a very good year.
You said you're about 12 miles from the DMZ. What exactly is the DMZ?
Demilitarized zone. That is the buffer zone in between North Korea and South Korea.
Okay.
And north of the Imjin River.
You said you were a heavy equipment operator for the Vietnamese War while you were in service there. Did you continue on with this assignment in the Desert Storm effort?
Yes, I had the same MOS, 62 Echo Charlie, I believe, which was a tractor crawler operator, bulldozer operator. And yeah, same thing. They didn't have bulldozers in the unit I was assigned to, but the MOS stuck with me. And I just did then whatever I was told to do. That's just the game you got to play. When you go to do in the service, if you don't like it, if you can't stand it, it doesn't matter. You just got to keep your mouth shut and follow orders. That's the way it runs.
What was were there any special moments or events that you kind of remember from either of these wars?
Oh. Well, the 2 years, the year and a half, year and 8 months that I spent in Fort Riley, Kansas, we really didn't do a whole lot. Mainly maintained equipment. There wasn't a whole lot of moving around it. We built a little bit of something, but we didn't stay real active with our equipment. I don't know if we just weren't spending the money. The military was kind of regrouping, I believe. We were the Big Red One, and they had some combat scars from Vietnam. Just trying to let things heal. In Korea, that was a neat place. I really enjoyed it. I liked the land, the people. They were pretty nice. If you went back far enough, you could meet some older people that you realized just by looking in their face and look in their eyes that they have respect for the American soldiers. You get in around the cities, in the little villages, and it's not a whole lot different from here, other than they didn't have running water very much. They didn't have toilets. They used outhouses, large family complexes. They didn't have big houses. They had little houses where 8, 10, 12, 14 people might sleep in what 4, 5, 6 people in this country normally sleep in. They went swimming in ponds where the drainage come off rice paddies that was fertilized with human manure. You didn't want to ever fall in a rice paddy. But north of the DMZ is where I had all my fun. I loved going across the river and going up on the demilitarized zone. I did a lot of work up here with my bulldozer, cutting big hills off so that one base could see another base. I'd standing up on my bulldozer and looking down at Panmunjom Village and the Bridge of No Return are pictures embedded in my mind that I'll never forget. Turning around and looking south and seeing the mountains sticking up through the clouds. They're just absolutely gorgeous place. Now there were a couple of times when while I'm bulldozing, I'm uncovering artillery shells or whatever, something that was metal and explosive, and we'd have to call explosive teams up to detonate it. And after 3 or 4 times calling them up there, they just finally told me, don't call us no more, just push it over the side. So that's what I did after that. I just didn't bother. I never did have anything explode on me. The only thing exploded was what they exploded. So, just didn't pay no attention to it after that.
Did you see any combat in either of your terms of service?
No, we didn't see any combat as far as having to actually fire rounds. but it came to the point where they were there and you were there, and it was just a matter of if somebody pulls the trigger, it's on. And nobody ever pulled the trigger. So it was almost like they were testing you, but they didn't really want you to pass the test. They didn't want you shooting at them anymore. We were not as aggressive as they were. We weren't sent over there to see what they would do. We were just a stabilizing force, keeping them in check. So it wasn't our job to go out and actually hunt them. That evidently was their job, because yeah, they came into our area several times.
Now you said that when you joined the Vietnam War, it was kind of dying down. How was the U.S. Keeping you supplied with ammunition and supplies that you needed on the war front?
Oh well, I was never on a war front. I was never in the first 2 years I was in the service, other than the firing range, just learning how to handle and shoot the M16 rifle. We didn't shoot hardly at all. In fact, we didn't get a whole lot of training with our weaponry the first 2 years. Stateside duty, like I say, just there wasn't a lot of force or drive. It was just, we were kind of backpedaling. The people that went overseas, though, were taught, trained a little better. Got a little bit better training over there than I did here as far as our mission. It's more serious, a little more complicated.
Did you receive any awards or medals?
Other than the basic awards or medals that you get when you get out of basic training, is your sharpshooter badge for your rifle and your hand grenade training. The one I did get was MGM Scout Award, and I really liked it. I wish I would have appreciated it a little bit more than I did, but I am proud of it. As far as I know, after I showed up at my unit in Korea, I was the only one that got the award, and you had to spend quite a few days on the demilitarized zone to get it. And I did spend a lot of time up there, but I was the only one that went up there. I'd put the bulldozer on the back of the semi, drive up there all by myself, unload it, and do the work all day long. And at the end of the day, I'd put it back on. If I didn't take it inside the compound where the infantry stayed, because they stayed there all 24/7, then I'd put it back on my tractor trailer and bring it back out, because I was only talking to where I used it, my work area, 14 miles from base. That's not really big a deal. It was easy to unload and load.
What was required of you to receive this award?
You had to spend you had to make so many trips inside the demilitarized zone. You had to cross the Imjin River, and I think it was 30, but I'm going to guess I probably spent the better part of 6 months up there. Just during the day, we had to stay at night.
How did you stay in touch with your family during these wars?
Just the mail. Now, when I was stateside, I could call, but when I went overseas, I didn't call. They did set up a ham radio of sorts that you could call on right at Christmas time in '76. The only thing is, there was a lot of people wanting to do it, and when you got done, it was just like it was a military setup. When you got done talking, you had to say over, and when the conversation was over, you said out. And I didn't want to talk to my friends. I was doing a job. They knew I was all right. I had pen and paper. I wrote. They wrote me. That was good enough for me. I didn't need the voice communication that year. I don't see that was a mistake, not calling home. I don't think it was. It was a good experience.
Did you keep any sort of a diary, or did you need to keep some sort of inner monologue?
No, that's something I probably wished I would have done. But then I'd be having to go back and read all the mistakes I made. So, no, I did not keep any diaries.
What else did you do to spend your time or entertain yourself?
Oh, we did a lot of running. For the first couple of months, I stayed on the post and just got a good gist of what was going on. The area around our post and the availability of special things just wasn't there. It was a combat-ready unit. We were prepared for whatever happened from this day to the next every day. There was a few villages around, but we didn't get to see the real good part of Korea, I don't think. And I only went to Seoul once. It was just too busy for me. There was just people running everywhere. I just never did really feel good in crowds. And a few of the villages around ours were less than reputable. So I just kind of stayed to myself. I had a couple of friends that liked to run. We did martial arts. Sit around, listen to stereos. You know, our days were long. We'd get up at 5 o'clock, and most of my days didn't end until well after 5 o'clock. So you only had, a couple, 3 hours, and we spent way too many of them partying. But we were inside a restricted compound. We had guards and barbed wire. It was different, but there was a lot of things in Korea that were really interesting. Some of their ways of life, the way they did things, and they were polite people, quiet people, nonviolent. I've never seen hardly any violence at all. Only one time that I can remember.
How did you spend your time on leave?
I never took leave. I was there for a whole year, and I got a 3-day pass once. And, basically, all I did was spend that getting in trouble. Or real close to getting in trouble, but just barely staying out of it. And that's one of those stories that I'm just not that proud of. So that's the one I'm going to pass.
Was there any humorous events or pranks that occurred in your term?
I don't remember it being humorous, but there was one thing that I do remember that was really strange. We had 7 Koreans. They were called Katusas. They were Korean Army attached to the United States Army. And they were neat guys. I got along great with all of them. But their leader, man, was he strict. They got partying a little bit too heavy one night, and a couple of them got into a fight. And you talk about absolute no-no. You do not hit each other. Well, the next day he lined these guys up, and he was chewing them out. I mean, really chewing them out. And I just stood there and watched. They just pretended like he didn't exist anyway when they're dishing out. He walked from one man to the next and would rip into them and then just beat them. He'd hit them so fast and so hard, and they would not move. They buckled, and they'd come right back up to attention. He would slap them, and he was letting them know that this was never going to happen again, and he was being nice. And this guy was very fast, and I think he was a 4th or 5th degree black belt. And that was the way they lived. That was the training. They were in a United States Army because that was good duty. They weren't in the Rock Army. In the Rocks, they were mean guys. The few I met, got along great with them, not a problem. But the training they went through compared to the training the guys went through that were attached to us was just nowhere near. But I liked them. I got along good with them. A couple of them called me brother. One of them wrote to me after I come home, and I wrote him back, but I never heard from him again after that. And I think about him every now and then, but that's just the way it goes.
How did you feel about your officers or fellow soldiers?
My fellow soldiers enlisted, we got along great. I don't remember ever having a problem. I got real close to a black guy over there named George. We had a lot of good times together. I've never talked or spoken or corresponded with anybody since I left. It's a real different feeling, but they were glad to see you go, and at the same time, not. That was just likewise with anybody that left. The officers, I guess they call them a little overbearing. They would say stuff that to me just didn't make sense, but it didn't have to make sense to me. They were in charge. What I couldn't understand, I just followed instructions and didn't worry about understanding it. Just got the job done.
Do you recall when your service ended?
Yes, I left my mom and dad's farm on August 26th, 1976, and that was my daughter sister's first birthday, and I was back on the farm August 26th, 1977, the day I came back up the driveway.
How were your first weeks back?
Well, the one thing I do remember more than anything was the whole year that I spent over there. I only got to watch TV one time. We had a TV, but I don't know, I just wasn't interested in it. Watched the Minnesota Vikings playing the Super Bowl. Well, we stayed up and watched that one night. I don't know, it seemed like that was like 3 in the morning. When I come home, I think I just sat down in front of the TV for about 4 days, and that's where I sat. I don't know if I just missed it that much or if it just seemed like it was a strange invention. Kind of figured out what it was. I didn't watch it at all. But when I came back, I did a lot of running, visit all my friends, and got around. Plus, I did a year in the National Guard from 77 to 78.
The Vietnamese War, there was a lot of anti-war sentiment going around. Did you encounter any?
Well, in all of my travels during my 3 years as a full-time service, I always traveled in uniform all I could. Chicago Airport, LA Airport, St. Louis. The one thing I remember more than anything was the Hare Krishnas. And the first time I met one, I was just really surprised. So they were selling books. All they wanted was $1 or $2. And so I bought one of these books and I carried it with me. And every time I went to a different airport, 3 or 4 of these Hare Krishnas had come over to me and wanting donations. I just pulled this book out and showed it to them. And they just go crazy. They just thought that was the neatest thing. And, I just, for $5, I bought this book. It was like 400 pages. I never read a word in the book, but it was just something that you could hold up, make friends, and avoid hassles. Now, I never had anybody come up to me in an airport and say anything bad towards me or good towards me. The only thing that ever happened to me when I flew was, this is on United Friendship flights, was every time I fell asleep in an airplane, I woke up with a pillow under my head and a blanket over me. And I thought that was just so neat. They made sure I was comfortable and warm. And I really appreciated that. But I never got treated badly. And nobody ever said anything mean to me. People looked at you now and then. A lot of times I traveled all by myself. And nobody else with me, no other soldiers. But for the most part, there was no blatant sign of respect or disrespect.
How did the people closest to you respond to your coming home?
Oh yeah, it was great. The whole family. At that time, 6 sisters and 4 brothers. Mom and dad. And I come home and surprised them. They didn't know I was coming home. Called home, and my brother come up to the airport, got me, and just come driving up, got out of the car, and there they are. That was good enough for me. That was good enough homecoming. It was worth the 3 years. Shaking Dad's hand, smile on his face, and big hug from Mom. Everybody jumping around. It was different. It was good. I really enjoyed it.
Did you make any close friendships during your terms?
Oh, I had a lot of really good friends. Angel Burgos was probably my best friend. I spent a year and a half in stateside duty in Fort Riley, Kansas with him. He was a Puerto Rican American from Queens, New York. And a real interesting guy and a real good guy. Really got along with him. But then again, just something about it. When we parted company, we parted company. Went back to our own little worlds. And never heard from him since.
So, you really didn't keep in touch with a lot of these people?
I have never spoken to anybody I was in the service with since I left.
After the wars, what kind of careers did you start?
Well, when I first came back, I really tried to find a job operating heavy equipment. There just wasn't anything close, and I didn't want to. I wanted to stay at home. Been halfway around the world, it seemed like, and a lot of traveling in this country. I knew I wanted to stay in Huntington the rest of my life. A nice, quiet little peaceful place. A lot of the craziness that was in the world that was surrounding army bases was not in Huntington, and I liked that. Felt like it was a privilege to have one of those places left. So yeah, that's I just wanted it to be nice and quiet, and for the most part it was.
And now, you said your father was drafted into the Korean War, and you participated, volunteered into the Vietnamese War, and now your son is a part of the current conflict in Iraq. How do you feel about that?
It's one of those things where you wish it didn't happen, but I was really proud of the fact that he stood tall, kept his head up, and left with pride and honor in his mind and on his heart, and made me feel really good. He was going to go and he was going to do his job, perform his duties the best he can, and he even one-upped himself. He did an exemplary job, and he still is as of this recording. Still in Iraq somewhere. Have not heard from him, but get letters. He's doing good. He was with the 3rd Army when they went in, and I'm extremely proud that he has fulfilled his obligation to his country and to himself.
Does your military background influence how you look at this conflict?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I guess the best saying that I've ever come up on is you must hate war, but you gotta love the warrior. You should never, ever be mad at a soldier that's following orders issued by the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States. You can be mad at the President all you want. He don't follow orders, he gives them. But these guys here, they're just doing what they're told, and that's what they gotta do. They don't have a choice. They gotta follow orders. And they did an absolutely fantastic job. Just absolutely amazed at what the military has done. The way they composed themselves, the way they reacted under bad situations, the high degree of honor and training that they seem to be getting nowadays is really good to see.
Has your son seen any combat yet?
He has not wrote me and told me that he has, but it is my impression that he went in with the 3rd Armor on the night of the invasion when they went around Basra and then into Nasiriyah. He can write me anything, and I told him, I want you to write me the truth. Don't worry about that. He said, I think he's waiting to tell me what happened. He just writes me and tells me he's okay.
When is he due back?
We have no idea. Absolutely none. They moved, the last thing that I heard was they did a lot of moving of people and supplies to designated areas in the first 2 months before the war. So they're probably going to be there moving the stuff back out for a while yet, I would imagine. As far as I know, he's just somewhere around Nasiriyah.
Is there anything else or any other experiences that you'd like to mention or share that we haven't covered?
Oh, not really. Just that, I'm really glad that I did the 3 years that I did, and I'm really proud of the 2 honorable discharges I got for serving my country. I was well trained and well taken care of. It's an honor to serve your country. That's the way I always looked at it. That's the way I always will look at it. And that was one thing that I pointed out to my son before he left, a day before he left. I said, son, you earn one of these and you earn it the right way. You can look at it the rest of your life and be proud of it. He didn't have to speak or answer, but he understood. He went with his head held high, and I believe he did the best job he possibly can, and couldn't be more proud of him. Just, I don't think it's possible being more proud of his son. And he's a volunteer. That's a great thing these days.
Thank you very much. This concludes our interview.